Welcome to tonight's web class. Tonight we will be discussing overcoming anxiety to live the life you want. I'm Keisha Golder, and I help women define their unique purpose so they can live a life that they created on their own terms. I also created the Your Life Purpose Makeover Journey, which is a 3-stage, 9-step program developed to change your life. But we're going to talk more about that later. As always, I want to remind everyone that there will be a question and answer section towards the end of the presentation. So if you can hold all questions until then, it will be greatly appreciated. Before we jump into tonight's topic, let's do a quick recap of last week. Last week, we discussed how it is important to live in alignment with your purpose. And not just your purpose, but to live in alignment anyway, so that everything that you want and desire can come to you. We talked about what alignment was. We discussed how alignment affects you holistically, as well as how it can lead you towards your purpose. So tonight we are discussing overcoming anxiety so that you can live the life that you want. In this discussion, we are going to talk about what anxiety is, how it affects us, and different ways for us to overcome it. And when I say overcome, I do not mean to get rid of it completely, because that's not impossible, but the tips that I am giving you are ways to overcome it so that you are able to gain control of it and not let it control you. So, ways to overcome your anxiety and live the life that you want. What is anxiety? Anxiety is the reaction of the mind and body to a stressful, dangerous, or unfamiliar situation. So, anxiety can be useful, especially because it keeps us alert and it makes us become aware of situations that normally we may not be aware of. Most of us have experienced some type of anxiety at one point in our lives, but there are people who suffer from anxiety disorders. And these people, when they have these stressful situations, instead of a sense of urgency or a sense of alertness, it really debilitates them and brings them down and kind of stops them where they are. There's no type of movement forward or otherwise. So, what are the types of anxiety? You have regular anxiety disorders, which are just characterized by excessive fear or an emotional response to a perceived or real threat. It's also worrying about a future threat that can be, and it can be negative behavioral or emotional consequences. So, a regular anxiety disorder could be emotional anxiety. Another type of anxiety disorder is obsessive compulsive disorder. We've all heard of people who are OCD. So that is obsessive compulsive disorders are invasive thoughts that trigger a compulsive behavior. And when that compulsive behavior is triggered, you also have another behavior that is triggered that is supposed to alleviate the stress or the anxiety from the compulsive behavior. So you've heard 9 times out of 10, or you've seen people who are obsessed with washing their hands or cleaning up. So they, no matter how clean their hands are, no matter how many times they wash their hands, they are constantly feeling like they need to wash their hands. And the only way that they get rid of that feeling is by washing their hands. A perfect TV show that I do not know if many people have watched, but it used to come on probably the early 2000s, and I know I watched it, Monk. he had obsessive compulsive disorder. He didn't like to touch anything, among other things. But obsessive OCD was the major one that he had. So anytime he touched something that he felt was dirty, and it didn't necessarily have to be, he either washed his hands, but most of the time he used wipes because he was mostly out in public. So he used wipes to clean his hands. Things had to be in a certain order. If things were not in a certain order, he could not function until those things were put back in that order. So that is what obsessive compulsive disorders are. A third type of anxiety disorder is trauma and stress related disorders. Now, these are related to stress and trauma and that we may experience. Some of those things could be unexpected death, a car accident, divorce. So anything that is going to create stress or trauma in your life, that's what a trauma and stressor related disorder is. Now, how is anxiety connected to your holistic self? Holistic self, remember, is our mind, body, and spirit. And so a lot of the times we suffer from anxiety because of its attachment to our emotional health. Remember, I said emotional anxiety. So emotional health is related to our mind and the holistic being. And our emotional health is related to our feelings. When we are emotional, it is because 9 times out of 10, we are in our feelings. So when we suffer from anxiety, especially emotional anxiety, we start to be in a state where our moods and actions and problem-solving skills are not as good as they genuinely are when we are not operating from an emotional state. We no longer have the clear mindset to make decisions that we would if we were not emotional. So when we are dealing with anxiety, and here's the truth, no one wants to hear you're being emotional. But sometimes when you're dealing with anxiety, especially emotional anxiety, you are 100% being emotional. It's just in that moment, you don't see yourself as being emotional and you don't see yourself as being irrational. You think that you are able to function the way that you would if you were not being emotional. So how does anxiety, emotional or otherwise, affect us? I listed 3 ways. Of course, there are more, but these are the ways that I think stick out most to people because we see these things sometimes in people and we don't correlate it to anxiety. Breathing and respiratory changes. So this is where you see a person gasping for air, that their chest is going up and down really, really fast, but they're not taking deep breaths. And most of us know that as hyperventilation. So that's where you feel that you're not getting enough oxygen, which creates the need for you to gasp for air. But you're not really taking in any air to control it. Another way is through your cardiovascular system, which is your heart. It increases your heart rate and it changes the circulation in your body. And the third way is it impairs your immune functions. So the strength of your immune system can be deteriorated by the amount of stress and things that you have in your life. So it can impair it over a long period of time. But initially, it'll give you a boost because, again, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to make you aware of something that's going on. So it'll give you a boost. But if you continuously go into it in a state of anxiety, it's going to begin to chip away at your good immune health, just like it will chip away at your good heart health as well. So people with chronic anxiety are more likely to get common colds, the flus, and other types of infections. What are the symptoms of anxiety? You feel nervous or tense, restlessness, sweating, shaking, fatigue, weakness, dizziness, and difficulty concentrating. Now, some of these symptoms can go for other things as well, but these are the most prevalent symptoms that we see in people with anxiety. Now, why do we want to be able to recognize anxiety? We want to be able to recognize when we're going through a state of anxiety or someone else is going through a state of anxiety so that we know how to help them break that state. We don't want to continuously walk around in a state of anxiety, for one, because of the health implications from it, and two, because of the way that we're not able to function the way that we have been able to function without being in these emotional states. Sometimes our emotional anxiety comes from us not being in alignment or not living the life that we want to live. We're going to live the life that others think we should live. So, how can we overcome this anxiety, emotional or otherwise, to get back to the life that we want? We can stop expecting the worst. A lot of our anxiety comes from expecting the worst. This is true for me because I have been a person who has always expected the worst in all situations, because I figure if I expect the worst, I won't be disappointed when things happen that I'm not necessarily used to happening. So expecting the worst, I figured, prepared me for whenever it came. But a lot of times me expecting the worst was setting myself up because the situations never happened. And I created all this stress and anxiety over something that was not even real. You can stop letting anxiety dictate your actions. When you are suffering from anxiety, you don't do anything because you feel paralyzed. You don't move forward because you're trying to avoid the things that you feel are going to make you anxious. That's no way for anyone to live. You have people who is along the lines of the obsessive compulsive disorders who don't leave the house because they feel the minute they leave the house, the earth is going to completely fall apart. Things are going to fall out the sky. They're going to get hit. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. These are real disorders for people, and it takes them years to come out of the house. If they even come out of the house, these people literally live in their houses, live normal lives in their houses because they're scared to even step out to get the mail because of the possibility of something that can happen. You don't want to live like that. You don't want to let that anxiety say, I can't leave the house for the next 20 years. You're going to miss out on everything. You're going to miss out on life itself, let alone love, family, friends. In this day and age, you can work from home, so that's not an issue. But even work, companionship, all of these things you miss out on because you are not leaving your house. Because you fear the possibility of something that may happen. People who suffer from anxiety also focus on the what ifs. So in order to overcome it, we are going to stop focusing on the what ifs. We are going to take away that what if. Why are we taking it away? Because the moment we focus on what if, we completely leave the present moment. We forget about the things that are happening around us right now. We're focusing on, well, what if I do this? Then this can happen. I'm not going to say who cares, but there are a lot of possibilities for every scenario that we may participate in. We can't focus on the what ifs because they're not concrete, they're not solid. They are actual possibilities that not only can happen to you, but can happen to me. But the more we focus on them, the more we give them the energy, the more they are consuming us and taking us away from the present moment that we're in. They're taking away from the possibilities of us enjoying life every single day and in every single moment. Another thing that people tend to do when they are suffering from anxiety is they develop unhealthy patterns of consumption. Now, when I say unhealthy patterns of consumptions, I'm talking about things that these people overload on, which can be sugar, television, alcohol, drugs, even social media. And so we're going to make it a point to stop these unhealthy patterns of consumptions. Do not make the first thing you do is start stress eating. And I know a lot of us do it. A lot of people that I know, at one point I did it. I started getting down on myself or I started anticipating something, which was creating anxiety, and I would eat. Not that I was hungry, but I would eat. And you get so used to that being your comfort. Not that it was actually comforting you, but you get used to that being your comfort, that you go to every time, or you sit and binge out on TV for 3 days straight. Don't leave the room. You stay in front of that television for 3 days straight because that is the pattern that you're using to deal with your anxiety. Of course, alcohol and drugs, we know that people do that all the time. But social media, think about that. Think about how many hours you've scrolled through social media thinking that, oh, I'm going to escape this anxiety or this emotional state that I'm in right now, and I'm just going to escape it. And you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, and every time you scroll past a picture of something, you start comparing yourself or your situation to that picture. You start thinking, wow, if I did what they did, and then you're creating more anxiety for yourself. We don't think about these things in the moments while we're doing them because we feel that they're helping us. But in the long haul, the longer we do them, the more we do them, they stop helping us and start hurting us because they're hindering us from making any progress forward to anything. So there's something that I want you to remember, and it is the more you feel your anxiety, the harder it will be for you to remove your anxious feelings. And you're going to think, well, I need to acknowledge them. Yes, acknowledge your anxiety, acknowledge it. But when you acknowledge it, also think of a way to remove yourself from that state. Because the more you're in that state, the more you are adding fuel to that fire, the worse those feelings are going to get, and the harder it is going to be for you to progress away from these emotional states and these states of anxiety. If you have any questions at this time, you can either type them in the chat box or unmute yourself so that you may ask. Hey, I like to keep in touch with everyone, so you can catch me on Facebook at Coach Keisha Golder, on YouTube at Keisha Golder, LinkedIn Keisha Golder, and of course, my website, www.keishagolder.com. There you can read blog posts, you can watch videos of previous web classes, you can watch videos that are in my blog post. You can also sign up for a call with me if you wanted to discuss something that is on my roadmap or something that may not be on the roadmap. You can also drop questions there or topics that you want me to cover later on in other web classes. So next week, what are we talking about? This is something that almost all of us have dealt with at one point in our life, and that's regret. So we're going to talk about why living a life of regrets will keep us from our dream lives. Here's my roadmap again, the Your Life Purpose Makeover Journey. And as you can see, like I stated, it's a 3-stage, 9-step program. Now, in this web class, we talked about anxiety and the anxiety that we get from emotional anxiety because we are disconnected from who we want to be and who others think we should be. So that is where step 1, where we want to be. We need to be able to be solid in who we are, where we want to be, and how we want to get there so that we won't suffer from those emotional states because we're disconnected from how we feel that we should be living and how we feel that or who we feel that we are and who others feel that we are. All of the steps on the roadmap are connected. They literally flow into each other because once you know where you're going to figure out if the core values that you're holding right now in this present moment are going to help you get to where you want to go, or are they going to hold you back because they're no longer serving you? The same goes for belief systems. Are your beliefs still in alignment with where you want to be? If they are not, how can you get rid of those belief systems and possibly adopt other belief systems that are going to help propel you to where you need to be? We discussed skills and talents. We all need skills to survive in this world, whether we're working for someone else, whether we're working for ourselves, or whether we are just trying to be the best person that we can be. We need skills. What are you passionate about? How are those passions connected to your skills? And how can those passions help you get to where you need to be? What have you experienced in life? Did it leave such a bad taste in your mouth that it's going to affect every decision that you make? Or did it give you an outcome or a different perspective to look at things so that you do things differently? What is your overall vision for your life? And how can you utilize that vision to help you with your purpose? What is your purpose? And then finally, we create the blueprint, that paradigm that you can use for not only this purpose, but any other purpose that you may come along, or any other journey that you may feel that you are going to go on later on down the line. So we're going to work on knowing who we are ourselves, knowing our environment, as well as knowing our path. And that's going to get us to our life made over. I thank you for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you next week.